Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conversations with Sekani, a podcast for people in their 20s who are trying to figure out life and not get lost along the way. Today's guest is Matthew McWhorter, a retired attorney whose life took an unexpected turn after a near death experience forced him to confront questions he has avoided for most of his life. Once an atheist and skeptic, Matthew faced a medical crisis that pushed him to the edge of eternity. During recovery, a simple but powerful thought kept returning to him. I've never read the books I was named after. The moment sparked a deep investigation into the Bible and the foundations of Christianity. What began as a skeptical courtroom-style inquiry into a into the reliability of scripture ultimately led to a profound conversion. Matthew is now the author of Canon Crossfire. Does the Protestant Bible blow up the case for Christianity? A meticulously researched exploration of the Bible canon and what it means for the truth claims of Christianity. Matthew, welcome to Conversations with Sekani. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. God bless. Happy to join you.
All right. So, wow,
Yeah.
reading your introduction and all, I'm
Yeah.
moved to ask you, right?
Yeah.
So you said you had this deep question, like what was the story of Matthew in the Bible? So I would
Yeah.
like to know actually, can you take us back to like what you read after knowing what Matthew was in the Bible? So can you like tell us, right?
Yeah. So actually it starts as a shallow question because all I
Mhm.
had was my name. My full name is Matthew Mark McWhorter. So I was named after the first two books of the New Testament. But I never read them. And my parents had not taught me it. We didn't go to church, we didn't pray, anything. I just had the name. In part because it's M, right? Matthew Mark
Mhm.
McWhorter, three M's. So I had these huge medical problems later in life. I'm very lucky to be alive. And as I was recovering, the question was, well, what do I want to make sure I get done before I die? And
Mm,
I'm like, well, I always meant to read those books. I just thought I would have a lot more time. So I hadn't done it yet. And so I sat down and I started reading them. The thing was, though, I didn't have a church or a person handing me a Bible to read.
mm,
So I went on to Amazon.com, this giant retailer, and I said, plug in Bible, and there were just so many Bibles that popped up,
mm,
and I didn't know which one to buy. And that's where this Canon Crossfire comes in, was I was actually examining the case, like I was wondering, is Christianity true? At the exact same time as wondering which one of these Bibles am I supposed to be viewing as true? And
mm,
that's where the book comes in, but that's a big part of my journey was sort of, questioning whether it's true and questioning what the Bible is. And that ultimately, I decided the Bible is true and Christianity is true, and I became Christian. And then I produced this book. I basically did a lot of research to try to analyze those questions and show people what the answers are in the book. So that's where the book comes from. But my journey was really this reading.
mm.
And at first, I just, okay, this is the Bible. I start reading. I'm like, oh, well, there's a lot more in here than I thought. And I started getting interested in it, started to wonder whether it was true, and I explored whether it was and decided it was.
All right. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, talking about like I want to start from the beginning, right? The
Yeah.
near-death experience.
Yeah.
So you were once an atheist, and what exactly happened during like the medical crisis that made you start questioning your beliefs?
Yeah. So again, my medical crisis was just I had was diagnosed with cancer, and we had a plan
Oh,
to deal with the cancer. And then almost immediately thereafter, right as we get the plan, I get this massive heart attack.
mm,
And so I'm very lucky to survive the heart attack, but it also conflicted with the plans for dealing with the cancer. So then I'm very lucky to have survived the cancer as well. So it's just
mm,
crazy that I survived with very, very low odds. And as I say, I'm healthy now, thank God. But as I was recovering from this, it was really just a question of, well, I might be dying soon, so what do I want to make sure I get done before I die? So it was that inquiry that led me down into the Bible, and then it was sort of a slowly dawning realization that Christianity is true, that there's more to life than I had realized, that there's more to the universe than I had realized. And it was following that up that ultimately fleshed out my Christianity and my beliefs.
Okay, wow. All right. And yes, by the way, I'm glad you're okay now,
Yeah,
actually.
thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, so it's interesting, right? When you're okay and then you can talk about it then.
Yeah,
Let's say reverse was the case. I don't think it's that been an interesting topic, right?
yeah, exactly. Had it ended otherwise, it would have been a short story.
So yeah, yes. So thank God actually. And yeah, talking about like the book, right? Reading the books you were named after. So the moment you realize you had never read the gospel you were named after is powerful. But like what did you discover when you finally opened them?
Yeah, so as I say, one of the big discoveries was that there were so many different Bibles. So
Mm.
what I did, I didn't know what to buy, so I just bought them all.
Oh
And I
wow.
piled up about 100 different Bibles because there's different translations, different commentaries on what it means and how we should see it. So I started reading Matthew chapter 1 across 100 different commentaries. And then that would be one week of reading. And then the next week I would read Matthew chapter 2. It took me 5 years to read the New Testament. But it was very, I'm a strange guy to have done it this way. Everyone sees that, right? But it was very fulfilling. It was very interesting. There's just so much depth to it that I didn't ever appreciate beforehand. I had a vague idea of what Christianity was about, but not very specific. And as I got into it, it was just far more interesting, far more insightful than I thought was expecting. And I just started wondering whether this story is true and whether that really is, the basis not only of the Bible, the New Testament story, Jesus and the crucifixion, etc., but also just that we live in a universe that was created by God. That God is love. Many elements of this story I didn't know. And so I'm sort of picking it up as I'm engaging in this reading. And I just, over and over, I was like, well, that sounds pretty good. That sounds like a great explanation, but is it true? And that was sort of my journey was partly understanding what the story is, but also partly checking the story, double checking the story as I was going along, right?
Right, wow. So, okay, you went from like skeptic to believer, right?
Yeah.
So, was there a specific moment when your like skepticism began to shift towards like belief?
Yeah. And so it was sort of a slowly dawning realization, like I said,
Mm,
but I was doing this research, right, into the
yeah,
very earliest days of Christianity. And I'm reading what these people were writing, and some of the things they wrote, it would be the preacher at the time.
mm,
He's facing torture and death for his beliefs. He's being, the persecution of the church is underway. He is writing facing this, in some cases, it's his last words as they're dragging him off to be executed.
yeah,
He's preaching to people in the church who are facing the threat of persecution.
mm,
And you get to read their reactions and their understanding and see how they come to this. But in addition, there are people entering the church at this early stage of Christianity, knowing full well that it could end in torture and death, and yet they join
mm,
anyway. And so my journey through this was sort of seeing their belief in it was really fulfilling, understanding how much that they valued this as truth and that they were only really concerned with the truth, right? The only reason to join up to this group that was being persecuted was because you believed it was true. Otherwise, why
mm,
endure torture and death, right?
mm,
They were obsessed with that truth, and that was a big part of my journey was seeing that, and that got me over, the doubts and the questions I was going was, the extreme belief in the truth of this that these people had was a big part of, and being able to read that firsthand, like to be able to read their writings was really a big part of me saying, well, this story must really be true, right?
Yeah. Wow. So, one unique thing about your story, right, is usually people who, went from being like an atheist to a believer, it's either maybe someone preached to them or they
Yeah,
went to a church, right?
yeah,
Yours is
exactly.
yours is unique because you actually just like on your own decided to just, seek the truth.
Yeah, I was 5 years into reading into Christianity and reading this Bible before I showed up at a church. I mean, I didn't even understand that you, like, when I started this, there was
Yeah.
no connection between what I was reading and going to church, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah.
I was thinking, well, I'll just read this stuff, and if I like it, I'll be Christian. Like, I didn't, it did the thought that then I have to show up at church had not occurred to me. And you really don't read that in the book until you get to the epistles, the letters from people later in the New Testament. So then I realized I had to go to church. So then, I show up at this place. I don't know anybody there. I'm just walking in the door. It really is very strange. And I have not really met anybody who's qu done quite what I did.
Yeah.
I'm a strange person. I did all this research. I did all this stuff. And that's kind of where my book comes in, is I had done all this work. And as I was slowly becoming Christian and thinking this in my head, I was like, well, it would be a shame if I died and I didn't get all this stuff out for other people so that no one else has to do this research that I've done. So
Exactly.
that is a big motivation in my book, was like, well, I did all this research. Let's make sure that people can go read it if they want. But
Exactly.
it is a strange journey. Like I said, I haven't met anyone else who's done anything like it. Usually people that I talk to have never met anyone who's done it. So it's a strange way. But it was, as I say, it was a fulfilling way. Here in America, you meet lots of Christians
Yeah.
who are, I think of them as happy Christians. Like,
Okay.
like it's come join my church. We have beautiful singing. We have this, that, and it's like I'm reading books about people being tortured and killed. Like I am reading, the hard end of Christianity, you might say, and it's just a very different journey than the people that I interact with who are, they love the singing and they went to church and it all, like, wow, wow, that's nothing like the early church. Like,
Oh,
thank God, thank God.
yeah. Okay. So, for the records, right? I don't think your journey is strange. I think it's unique. I think it's
Yeah,
unique
unique. There
and
you go. That's a
beautiful.
politer term. Yeah,
Exactly. So yeah, and I'm grateful you were actually able to do this whole research so that people like us who don't have to go and start doing it all over again. So we could just
exactly.
read your book
E-
and then
Even my fellow lawyers, scholarly types, etc., when they're looking at the book, they always say, like, "Thank God you did the research, and I only have to read about it." Like, it's a
exactly.
lot easier.
So yeah, thank God actually. And yeah, it brings me to, ask us after you've read the Bible, you've understood a lot of things about the Bible. So you then chose Catholicism, right?
Yeah.
So your research ultimately led you to not just Christianity, but specifically to Catholicism. So what evidence convinced you?
Yeah, so my book was let's go back. Even before I am becoming Christian, I'm asking what is the correct Bible? Like what is the Bible that takes me back to the original teachings of Jesus, etc. And I got conflicting stories based on what I was reading. So the Protestant Bible is the smallest Bible. There's a Catholic Bible, which is bigger, has a few more books in it, and then there are Orthodox Bibles, which have larger Bibles. And then both within the Protestants and the Orthodox, there's variations. And I'm getting completely different stories as to what was going on in the early church and what people were reading and what they were accepting. So that's the research that I do. That's the core of my book, is showing people what the earliest church did, because I had these conflicting versions and I didn't know what the truth was. And part of not knowing what the truth was is I couldn't find a book that would show me the answers to some questions that I had. And one of the key question was, what did every single Christian in the earliest days of Christianity ever say about these extra books?
Mm.
that you find in a Catholic Bible, but not in a Protestant Bible. Like what did everybody say? That didn't exist. But it after I did a lot of research, and there is a way to find those things that they said. Be assured that you have found them all and put them all together. And that's what I do in the book. So I'm assembling all that. I'm showing people how I did it. You can double check my work if you don't believe me. Go out and supplement it if you find something I missed, etc. But you can look at the book and what I did to assemble it because I couldn't find any other way to read this stuff. I just wanted to know what everybody said. And that's the key to the book. After you have the stuff on the table, after you can see what everybody said, people can make their own decisions as to what's right and what's wrong. I ultimately decided that the Catholic Bible was the correct one. And then that led me, that's step one, 1,001 steps. I eventually ended up in the Catholic Church. But the initial step was, what is the right Bible? And
Um,
as I say, I just wanted to know what everyone said about these books before I made my decision. So that's what I went out and found. It just took a long time to assemble it, but now I've done it, and everybody can sort of start with that as the foundation, right? And build up from there wherever you want to go.
all right. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, I would say, right, you choosing Catholicism, it's your belief, and yeah, you like you said, you've done the research and all, and it's left for us to also read your book and then probably do a little bit of
Yeah.
research too to confirm, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's the book is not judgmental, or no one's been offended by the book or anything. Like no matter
Mm,
what you believe, it's mostly just presenting the evidence,
mm,
and showing people what it is,
mm,
and trying to analyze it in the same context as this as the evidence for Christianity itself, because you want to be fair, right? It's not just what the evidence is, you want to judge it fairly.
mm,
And so I present it that way. I show it. And as I say, I show you how I assembled it so that you can go out. If you don't believe a word I say, you can go double check every word. You don't really have to. I did that because I did it honestly, or, right. But you can see the mechanics of how to do it if you actually wanted to and double check it all.
mm,
So it's just the goal was to present it so that everyone has it. And now anyone who wants to know the answer to these questions can go do it in far, far, far less time and research than I had to put into it.
mm. All right. I personally, I don't
Yeah.
think I would be doing that. I feel like you've done it already, right?
I
I
the
don't
most
have to
common
start.
answer I get from people when I talk about this is like, "Wow, that's interesting," but like they were never, they always, or I should say, they'll say like, "I've always been interested in that." But it took too much work. Like
Too
I
much
would
work.
never do that. And
It's
so
not.
anyway, I get that a lot that it's like, yeah, that fascinates me too, but not enough to do that work. Like, yeah,
Okay, that's true actually. And
yeah.
yes, I would say the same for myself. It's fascinating, but I don't think I can do that much work, right? I feel like
Yeah,
you've
and
done it for us.
it's I thank God that I was retired. I had the time to
Yeah.
do the work. Like, at a different time in my life, I would never have done the work either. But luckily I was retired and like, I can do this.
Yeah. All right. So yes, talking about like faith and evidence, right?
Yeah.
So many people believe like faith and intellectual inquiry are opposites.
Yeah.
So how do you reconcile the two?
Yeah, I find that almost offensive. Like it's misunderstanding. They line up together and work together.
Mm,
And to me, a part of my journey was that by opening up my mind through faith, I now see things intellectually that I never saw before.
mm,
And people, I think, that in America, I describe these things as two drunk guys on bar stools yelling at one another, right? They're, you can get into that argument about, faith versus intellectualism, or your intellect,
mm,
maybe when you don't respect the other person or you're yelling, but like, there's an awful lot of extremely intellectual Christians out there, enormous amounts of intellectual writing, etc. They work hand in hand. It's just
mm,
that initial step of opening your mind to the possibility that
mm,
then lets you see it. And so many of us are trying to, state that message here in the modern world of showing people it's not just faith. It is faith plus reasoning, logic, science, etc., showing you what the real truth is out there.
Mm. Okay. All right. So yes, thank you so much. This has been amazing actually. And finally, right, I have like a question for you.
Yeah.
So for listeners who consider themselves skeptical or should I say atheist, what would you invite them to explore?
Yeah, as I say, I did this. There's like an experimental stage, right?
Mm,
And I would invite them to explore the experimental stage. Open your mind up to the possibility that God is acting in your life, that you can see Him, that He is sending signs, etc. And suddenly you see Him all over, and you see the interactions. But it's because you don't believe in it a priori, as we say in philosophy, but because you don't believe it as an initial principle that you're not seeing them. My own
mm,
experience was that as soon as I was open to them, they were all over the place. So that would be my main suggestion to somebody. And then once you've done that, engage in the reading, start reading stuff. There's plenty of
mm,
extremely, as I say, intellectual philosophy, et cetera, out there to get you over your concerns. You just got to go look for it.
All right. So yeah, thank you, Matthew, for sharing your journey from like skepticism to faith and for encouraging people to, examine the foundations of what they believe. And yes, it brings us to the final segment of my podcast, right? It's called the rapid fire segment.
Ah,
So I always like how guests react when I say the word rapid fire
yeah,
segment.
exactly. Well, as a lawyer, I'm a little experienced. Let's try it. Let's see how it goes.
I know you are
Yeah.
experienced actually. So yeah, starting now, right? So faith means
Faith means the belief that God exists, and which as we say, back up with intellectualism. But it is that belief, the core belief, is your faith.
oh right, and yes, truth requires
Requires inquiry. Truth is something you pursue, not something that
mm,
you accidentally encounter.
okay, and yeah, the biggest misconception about the Bible is
That it fell out of the sky exactly as it is. There's a history there. Research it through my book.
okay, all right, and yeah, a skeptic should always
Be open. Just a true skepticism is not a defined belief. It is openness to
mm,
beliefs, questioning all of them, but being open to them. So be open.
okay, and yeah, grace reveals
Reveals God's love that we do have a creator, but also that He's a loving creator.
oh, okay, and yes, a strong faith includes
A belief in truth and a focus on truth.
all right, and yeah, finally, the search for truth begins with
With the first step. Open your mind and then go look for it. If your first step is still with a closed mind, then you're just deceiving yourself.
okay, so thank you so much, Matthew. Where can listeners get to know more about you and what you do?
Yeah, so canoncrossfire.com is my website. It's Canon of Scripture, Canon Crossfire, CROSSFIRE.com. That's my website. That'll take you to websites to go find the book. I have audio books, for example, different types of books, print books, ebooks, etc. I have a blog there, and on Twitter at Canon Crossfire is my Twitter address, and I'm available there if anyone wants to reach out to me.
Okay, all right. So I like the whole idea of like the audiobook. I think
Yeah,
that one is where you find me.
I have so many friends who are like, I love books, but I never read. I'm like, oh, I guess I need an audiobook.
Yeah, I did an audio book actually. So
Yeah.
yes, Matthew, this has been fun and amazing. So thank you so much. And yes, to my audience, thanks for tuning into Conversations with Sekani. If this episode sparked something in you, make sure to share to someone you think might need it. And also subscribe so you don't miss out on new episodes. Thank you, Matthew. Do have a wonderful day.
Thank you. God bless.
All right, bye bye.